미래 세계 질서가 어떻게 변화할
How
것인가라는
the future
질문에
order will change. To answer this question, our research team has conducted 3 tasks. First, we examined various scenarios to look into the future world order and narrow them down to the most plausible scenario. Second, we analyzed the distinct characteristics of the fields of trade, technology, industry, and security in forecasting the global order, paying particular attention to how security and economic domains are becoming increasingly intertwined. Third, based on the insights that we have garnered, we are proposing strategic directions for Korea. A rule-based global order that lowered barriers around the world is very unlikely to continue in the future. That is because of the weakening of the U.S. leadership, intensifying U.S. China rivalry, and rising geopolitical risk and supply chain disruption. And it is causing the world to be split into many pieces, causing fragmentation. At our research team, we agreed to this outlook, but we noted that the world order will go into a new phase after this disruption. We defined that the nature of the order that emerges through this boundary-making process as clubbing. This clubbing means that a complex order formed after the past chaos, when the stable security system supported an integrated global market, will now come into a new order in the present time through separation, diversification, and fragmentation. Since the second Trump administration took office, we are seeing some difference in what the U.S. is doing in the global world. In Trump 2.0 era, rather than exercising its leadership to maintain the world order, the U.S. is only putting the emphasis on its national interest and putting others isolated. Amid this change, the whole world is going through fundamental transformation, and there are 3 main reasons. First, unlike in the past, one nation can no longer take responsibility for the whole world. We have climate change, ecological crisis, and large-scale natural disaster and pandemic. All those transnational challenges are growing rapidly, and they cannot be resolved by one nation. Transnational problems require transnational solution. Second, globalization has worsened domestic economic inequality, triggering political populism. So this is a vicious cycle. This has weakened democracy and norms while accelerating nationalism and exclusive prioritization of national interests. Third, the U.S. China competition is intensifying. This is not limited to one area but spans to all domains, including military power, defense network, and economic realm. As you can see in the Lowry Institute's Asia Power Index, China and U.S. possess the capacity to address transnational challenges. And as they are not collaborating but putting more emphasis on competition, we are seeing the global security order at crisis, and we are seeing the clubbing or something like a block-based structure. So the U.S. and China are forming their own blocs, and some U.S. allies like China, Korea, Japan, and Australia are also forming loose clubs, maintaining their economic ties with China. Non-Western groups like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea do not form fully coherent bloc because of their economic and strategic interests. Strategic fragmentation is expected to persist for some time. From now on, I will go into what this clubbing means. It is two major forces driving the formation of two boundaries. First is the securitization of the economy, and the other is the economization of security. What does securitization of economy mean? In the past, we only looked into the economic values when it came to trade, technology, and supply chain, but now they are treated as a national security issue. During the Trump's first term, the U.S. labeled China's unfair trade practice as an economic threat and national threat. And this also appears in specific industries as well. Too much dependence on a single country for semiconductor supply is also coming from this basis. The U.S. has demanded allies such as Korea and Taiwan to manufacture semiconductors on the U.S. soil to have this ally shoring or friend shoring. So this is like a key example. Meanwhile, economization of security refers to the growing involvement of economic logic in traditionally security-related issues. For example, demanding greater defense burden sharing from allies or viewing support for countries at war as an opportunity to expand their own defense industry could be the example. So together, they are creating even more acceleration in the global fragmentation. This club-based world that is emerging through fragmentation will have the following characteristics. First, focusing on the U.S. and China, those two clubs will be competing and clashing. China and the U.S. will not just be competing with each other, but also will form alliance with their friendly nations to reinforce their respective clubs. Yet, these two clubs will not be of equal size. As you can see on the right side, it shows their position in the economic field. So you can see that U.S.-centered club holds about 42% and China-centered club takes about 27%. Second, inside the club, we will have the centripetal and centrifugal forces happening at the same time. So these centripetal forces will strengthen the cohesion as U.S. China competition intensifies, pushing members toward greater alignment and developing self-sufficient economic and industrial ecosystems. Meanwhile, both the U.S. and China are pressing member states to harmonize their policies. However, excessive pressure can trigger negative side effect, weakening cohesion among member countries. And China has also experienced economic difficulties due to this new paradigm. The U.S. has demanded its allies to participate in the export control and sanction on the AI chips in relation to China. China is also putting actions on countries that are not cooperating with its foreign policy objectives. However, if too much pressure is imposed, nations in the club will feel too much burden and their cohesion might weaken. In this new club-based society, one other characteristic is that there will be certain degree of permeability among members. Permeability can occur in two ways. First, despite rivalry, the two clubs will maintain economic or industrial engagement. There still will be interactions. Even as the U.S. restricts the decoupling when it comes to AI chips, it cannot be totally free from China. It is enhancing the control of chips import and export, but it still allows NVIDIA to export the modified H12 AI chip. It shows the ongoing cross-club exchange. Permeability will be maintained by connector states or swing states. The U.S. and China are reducing dependence on each other, but there are countries that are not involved in that problem directly, and they will be used as the swing states or connecting states. So as you can see here, the U.S. and China are increasing their trade with those swing states, and this will continue in the future. Next, I will look into what I have explained so far in terms of trade, supply chain, and technology. On this slide, you can see the fragmentation of the global order between 2018 and 2023, when the trade war between the U.S. and China occurred. On the left side, you can see 2018, the U.S., China, and Germany forming the core of regional trade clusters, and the U.S., China having strong connection. You can see that the open global trade order is still intact. On the right side is 2023, and global trade order has changed a lot. The U.S. and China connection has weakened. Meanwhile, you can see in the highlighted yellow, Japan, India, and Singapore have shifted from China's sphere towards the U.S.-centered cluster. In the advanced industry supply chain, we are seeing similar changes. First, the U.S. and China decoupling has become very clear. China has been serving as a major supplier to the U.S. in 2018, but in 2023, this supply connection has weakened. Second is the fracture of the China-centered bloc. Japan and Thailand, which were core partners of China in 2018, shifted to the U.S.-centered bloc in 2022. Korea and Japan have joined the U.S.-led friendshoring, accelerating the structural reorganization. Meanwhile, regarding this change, China is responding by building its own indigenous supply chain. Next is the big change happening in the global technological order. In 2018, if you look at the national patent network, you can see that the US and Japan were the main pillars of patent and main technology. However, 5 years later in 2023, of course, the US is still maintaining its position, but China is replacing Japan. However, in terms of size, core member of this club, China, Korea, and Japan are moving away from the China club. So this could be like a weakness for China, but also it could be a stimulus to facilitate the independence of China's technology. So it shows the forefront or the battleground of technology welfare. So we have looked into the change in the global world and how the orders are being changed. So what kind of strategy should Korea pursue in this time of uncertainty? What should be our strategy? I believe that the key word for this will be the risk management. In the time of uncertainty, of course, the national interest is very important. However, the method should be different from the past. We should not depend on a single strategy or tool, but various strategies and tools should be combined together. So based on this understanding and our research team, we have summarized Korea's national strategy into 5 areas. First, Korea should become a proactive bridging state. Korea should prevent excessive rivalry among states while also strengthening solidarity within the club nations. To do so, Korea must secure a central position in fostering the inter-club and intra-club interaction. At the beginning of November, we had the Seung-joo APEC summit, and it showed Korea's potential as a bridging state. To be a bridging state, we need to have the aggregate power and agenda-setting capability. Aggregate power refers to the ability to convene various states in one location despite conflicting interests. At this year's APEC, Korea provided the venue for the U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, two central rivals, to meet directly for the first time in 6 years. Both leaders used the APEC summit to move one step closer to each other. Aggregate power becomes more effective when it's combined with the agenda-setting capability. Korea, during the APEC summit, played a critical role in setting AI cooperation and demographic change as a major agenda. As a result, we have adopted the AI initiative at APEC. This is the first formal AI joint vision within APEC, and it is the only summit agreement joined both by the U.S. and China. So this shows how agenda setting requires intellectual capability and understanding of complex issues. Second, global restructuring of order makes the beginning of an era of adjustment. Adjustment will lead to this question of who will bear the cost of adjustment. The Trump administration argues that the U.S. has been bearing a lot of cost to maintain the global order and defend allies, which were benefiting its allies. So it's now time for the allies to pay back. From the U.S. perspective, it's an overdue adjustment. Negotiation under the Trump administration cannot be final, but would be work in progress. Even if the tariff negotiation is concluded, it doesn't mean that the trade conflict would be resolved, but still there will be new demand from the Washington for new negotiations. Third, we will have the securitization of economy and economization of security happening simultaneously, and risk management has become even more essential. The U.S. views Korea-U.S. relations from security, geo-economic competition, and fairness perspective. In the security dimension, U.S.-Korea defense ties may evolve toward a structure where Korea focuses on deterrence against North Korea while the U.S. concentrates on countering China. Korea must strengthen its own deterrence capability while establishing safeguards to minimize damage and manage crisis. And Korea must cooperate with the U.S. in core industries like semiconductor, batteries, and shipbuilding to secure economic security. Regarding fairness, Korea must prepare for the U.S. stance of reciprocal tariff. Fourth, Korea must bear the dual burden of high military cost and economic interdependence with the U.S. Korea should not just depend on one nation but pursue a hybrid strategy. It is to achieve the risk management that I just mentioned. To be more concrete, what I'm trying to say is that Korea should maintain a core position within the U.S.-centered security club while also enhancing its own capabilities. Moreover, we should enhance strategic originality while not harming the relationship with China. In order to achieve that, we have to enhance our partnership with EU, Japan, and Australia, while also moderating our stance towards China. When we are creating new boundaries, I believe that we can utilize the sovereign AI strategy that the government has announced. The world is divided and it's fragmented, but I think there are still opportunities. Our goal is pragmatic and sustainable AI sovereignty. The solution comes from selection and concentration. In key security areas like national defense, public sector, energy, and telecommunication, we need to have our autonomous technology. And in other areas, we need to have the open source ecosystem and private sector partnership to secure both speed and practicality. Korea should use the U.S. open source AI to build sector-specific application while seizing opportunities from the U.S. AI infrastructure initiatives such as the Stargate project. Korea must also pursue international cooperation with like-minded countries to build a responsible AI order. This is how Korea can manage risks and achieve practical AI sovereignty in this time of change. Fifth, in order to have the risk management and have the hybrid strategy, we need to have domestic readiness. We must achieve just-in-case governance structure to respond to changes in swift and flexible manner. Because we believe that unexpected things can happen anytime, so we need to have flexibility and quick response. In order to do that, we need to have expertise of individual ministries and combine that with the coordinating capabilities of the presidential office and expand the private-public cooperation. Thank you for listening.